I have a rule. I will never hate a draft pick. I will never come on and say, I hate that pick. Because the second you do that, that guy turns into the next Terrell Owens. Or that guy turns into the next Warren Sapp. Or that guy turns into the next Ray Lewis. So, again, I did not like the Titans draft. And I think you should be allowed to not like it. I think they have more question marks than they entered the draft with. But, again, I will not say that I hate a pick. But I've decided, instead of just lumping them all together, I'm going to give you all 8 picks, one by one, what I think of the pick, where I think they'll fit, and I will tell you what I think in order for this pick to work. So, of course, we start at the top with the Titans' first pick.
Number 1.
Caleb Farley, first round, 22nd overall. I think this was a very aggressive pick by John Robinson. Now, he has done this. We have said Corey Davis was injured. He drafted him. Jeffrey Simmons was injured. He drafted him. Harold Landry had injury concerns. They drafted him. John Robinson is aggressive. Farley, everybody says, is a top 10 talent if he's not hurt. But here's Caleb Farley. 2017 tears his ACL. 2018, 2019, really good season. Then he has back surgery in 2019. Then he opts out. Totally fair. Has back surgery again before the draft. That is an aggressive pick. There is a reason the first 21 teams passed on him. But I will say this. Stefania Bell, ESPN injury analyst, was on our show on Friday, and she seemed to be fine with that pick. John Robinson's probably hearing the same things. That being said, just because it worked with Jeffrey Simmons and a torn ACL does not mean that it will work with Caleb Farley and a back injury. An ACL is so commonplace. It's like Tommy John for a pitcher. It's not the same as a back. So don't say, well, it worked with Simmons, so it'll work with Farley. Don't say, hey, it worked with Rob Gronkowski, so it will work with Farley. Those are no guarantees. In fact, a lot of high Titan draft picks have gotten hurt and have never been the same afterwards. Marcus Mariota, Kevin Dyson, Kenny Britt, Tyrone Calico, all derailed by injuries in their careers after starting off well. This is an aggressive pick. For this to work, Farley has to stay healthy, and he has to be the first number 1 true corner the Titans have had since Cortland Finnegan. Anything less than that, even if he's a starter in the NFL and he's okay, that's still not good enough for what they picked and the risk they took.
Number 2.
Dylan Rayden, second round, 53rd overall, right tackle out of North Dakota State. I am not going to blame John Robinson for going back to the well at tackle. A lot of people say, he's just chasing the Isaiah Wilson pick. I don't believe that. Right tackle is a long-term need for the Tennessee Titans, regardless of whether or not Isaiah Wilson worked out. Had Isaiah Wilson worked out, it wouldn't have been a need. He probably wouldn't have been the pick. What I wonder, too, is does John Robinson think, hey, I can patch it up on the right side with backup guys? Dennis Kelly was a backup guy. Kendall Lamb is a backup kind of guy. Ty Sambrilo is a backup kind of guy. Could this be long-term insurance for Taylor Lewan at left tackle? Taylor Lewan carries a $15 million cap hit next season, and he hasn't been totally healthy of late. That's a concern. If Lewan sees another injury, if Lewan sees another PED suspension, if Lewan sees a drop in his play, is the idea that they can have Dylan Rayden spend a year coaching him up, play him maybe a little at right tackle, swing him over to the left side. I think the one thing we need to keep in mind, David Quessenberry did a good job of being a third-string left tackle, but that's what he is. I think they want more insurance this year. They want more tackles. You can never have enough tackles. So the idea of Dylan Rayden, I understand it. I don't love it. But I do wonder, is he the long-term insurance option for Taylor Lewan? For this pick to work, for this pick to be successful, Dylan Rayden needs to start at a tackle spot in 2022. And unlike Jack Conklin, who ended up not getting a second contract with the Titans, he needs to get a second contract with the Tennessee Titans. A la Michael Roos, second-round pick, 10-year left tackle. That's what you need in order for this pick to be successful.
Number 3.
Monty Rice. And oh my goodness, was that a head scratcher? Third round, 92nd overall in a trade down with Green Bay. I did a lot of research today about Monty Rice because if you were listening to the draft show, I could not believe the Titans made this pick. Number one, he does not fit a need, but that doesn't mean it's a bad pick. Remember Derrick Henry? Doesn't make it a bad pick. Monty Rice profiles very similarly, in my opinion, to Wesley Woodyard and Avery Williamson. Linebackers who are instinctive, who play hard, who go after the football, and can hit. But quite frankly, those guys couldn't run very well. And apparently this guy can't either. Think of the opposite of Jayon Brown. Jayon Brown used to come in as a rookie in third down spots, but Jayon Brown can run. Jayon Brown's got some big play in him. Those guys didn't. They were just solid middle linebackers. That's what Monty Rice is. And while I don't like the pick, is because I think you can find that Wesley Woodyard, Avery Williamson type. I think you can. The undrafted free agent the Titans had in camp a couple of years ago was the story of preseason. And now he's a middle linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And yeah, he's a backup kind of guy, but he can hit and he can't run. Middle linebackers who can run are guys who get drafted highly. I don't love the Monty Rice pick. For this pick to work, Monty Rice ultimately has to be the heir apparent to Rashaan Evans, and he's going to have to be able to cover. It's going to have to be one of those guys who he comes in without the physical tool, and he develops it somewhere. Jayon Brown has developed tools like that. You got to get a guy who, okay, he can't do this, but he's got to learn some way somehow.
Number 4.
Elijah Molden, third round, 100th overall, the comp pick for Jack Conklin. I am not in love with the Elijah Molden pick like everybody else is. If you listen to the draft show, I was just through the roof when they took him because it didn't feel like a reach. It didn't feel like a bad player. And honestly, you can never, ever, ever have enough corners. So I liked the Molden pick more than I liked Rice and Rayden's earlier. On the depth chart, I'm not exactly sure where they want to play him. I felt like by taking Caleb Farley, they want to swing Christian Fulton inside to the nickel position, which makes sense considering that's where he played at LSU. But Molden is a nickel too. So I'm thinking that we're going to see Elijah Molden kind of in that Amani Hooker position, the extra DB. In the dime package, you might see him out on the field. But again, you can never have enough corners, and I feel like he's insurance for Caleb Farley. For this pick to work, Elijah Molden has to be ready on day one because we don't know about Caleb Farley, and he ultimately has to become a core group of corners with Caleb Farley and Christian Fulton. Those three guys, you shouldn't have to worry about corner in free agency or the draft for a couple of years.
Number 5.
Dez Fitzpatrick, fourth round, 109 overall, a trade up with Carolina. This is by far my favorite pick, and not just because he went to Louisville, although that is a great school, so I now know that he's very well educated. I believe that Dez Fitzpatrick will be a better pro than his teammate Tutu Atwell will be. I think Dez has better size. I think Dez fits what the Titans are looking for. I tweeted this out on Saturday. My buddy Mark Ennis hosts the afternoon show in Louisville. We're very close. He is very in-depth with Louisville football. I asked him what he thought of Dez Fitzpatrick, and he said, unprompted, that Dez would fit better as a pure slot on a team with outside guys who run a solid offense, and that Dez Fitzpatrick will block his butt off. I said that kind of makes sense. They got A.J. Brown outside, and they got Derrick Henry running the ball. Now, Todd McShay brought this up on the broadcast. Early in Dez Fitzpatrick's career at Louisville, there were some immaturity concerns. I asked about those to people I trust in the Louisville football program. They said that after Bobby Petrino left as coach, that Dez Fitzpatrick really grew up. I think we all know enough about Bobby Petrino to say, that makes some sense. By the way, it should be noted that he had some really bad quarterbacks at Louisville. He had 9 touchdowns in 2017 with Lamar Jackson as his quarterback. For this pick to work, I think Dez Fitzpatrick has to come in and play the slot on day one, and he and Josh Reynolds have to replace Corey Davis and Adam Humphries' production in 2021. That's going to be a tall task because Davis put up some numbers, and Humphries wasn't terrible when he wasn't hurt.
Number 6.
Rashad Weaver. Now, I'm going to give you my Rashad Weaver take pre-news about the assault allegations because that totally throws everything off. But Rashad Weaver, 4th round, 135, that pick acquired in a trade with Green Bay. Rashad Weaver is not the edge rusher the Titans needed. And John Robinson said that he'll play at outside linebacker, and I find that to be odd considering that he was a 4-3 defensive end in Pittsburgh. We saw them try to move Derek Morgan outside. We saw them move Brian Arakpo outside when you switch the scheme up. I don't like it. I think a 4-3 defensive end is a 4-3 defensive end, and that's what Weaver is. He also lacks the athletic traits that would allow you to kind of move out to that position. So that kind of bothers me. John Robinson was saying, hey, he can go up over the guard. Well, you're going to play that guy at outside linebacker? Because you're not putting Harold Landry over the guard. Even Jadeveon Clowney last year was a 4-3 defensive end. They tried to get to play outside linebacker. I don't love it. They needed edge rusher help, but they needed guys who could come in and spell Dupree and spell Landry and ultimately take over for him. And again, athletically, I don't think I like that because I don't think Rashad Weaver has the athletic traits. You know, he has kind of the, I wouldn't say the personality because I don't know his personality, and I don't even want to go down that road today. But he plays hard. You know, the love football, the get after it, that's one of his strengths. But he's a 4-3 defensive end. For this pick to work, Weaver's got to be able to play outside linebacker. Like, he's got to be able to do it. I don't think he can, but he's got to be able to play outside linebacker. He ran a 4.86 40, and I know people don't get too involved in 40s, and it's like, well, who cares running in shorts and a T-shirt? And he ran a 4.86 40. Bud Dupree ran a 4.57. Harold Landry ran a 4.64. He is significantly slower than both guys. That is a big deal. And the other thing, can Weaver play if Bud Dupree's not ready week 1? I don't know.
Number 7.
Racy Mcmap, the 6th round wide receiver, 205 out of LSU. I hate, well, hold on, let me say I don't hate picks. I don't like this pick. And here's why I don't like it. McMath may turn out to be a great player. I don't know. But it fits no need the Titans have outside of replacing Chris Milton as the ace gunner on special teams. You don't draft a gunner in the 6th round. I love speed. The Titans never have enough of it, and Racy Mcmap ran a 4.39 40. But he only had 33 catches and 4 touchdowns in 4 seasons at LSU. And that involved a lot of games last year in 2019 in which they were usually up about 55-3 at halftime. And he still only had 33 catches in his career. So, again, you're taking a gunner in the 6th round. You have no kicker, you have no tight end, and you have no depth at outside linebacker. To me, a total head scratcher because, again, McMath, a speed guy who can play special teams, you can find that in undrafted free agency. You can find that if you really look for it. I thought this was a total reach and not really a need with Racy Mcmap in the 6th round.
Number 8.
8th and final pick was Brady Breeze, a 6th round pick, the 215th pick of the draft. I kind of like this pick. And here's why I like this pick. Again, I don't like a special teamer in the 6th round, but I get it. Some 6th rounders don't even make teams. But when he played on defense at Oregon, he put up stats. He was the Rose Bowl MVP, as I'm sure all of you know by now. But he kind of reminds me of the safety version of David Long Jr. The Titans took David Long Jr. in 2019, where he was Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year out of West Virginia. And it was like, yeah, he made plays in college. He's a nice player, but he doesn't have the size or he doesn't have the strength of a higher middle linebacker. So he's going to be a special teams guy and kind of a project. David Long Jr. was the starting middle linebacker for the Tennessee Titans in the divisional round playoffs at Baltimore in 2019. And he played a heck of a game. Again, David Long Jr. is not a Pro Bowler, but David Long Jr. can play middle linebacker. And I'm not saying Brady Breeze is David Long Jr. I'm just saying it kind of reminds me of the guys a little undersized, a little underdeveloped. But ultimately, I think he could find, he's got great ball skills and get after it and everything else. Just like David Long Jr., he could find his way onto the football field. So I kind of like that pick in the 6th round. So, again, those are my takes on all the picks. You can tell that some of these, I didn't love. But, again, I will never say that I hate a draft pick. By the way, for this pick to work, Brady Breeze has to be a core special teamer like Racy Mcmap. But he's got to get better to where he can play on defense at some point in his career and not get exposed. Those are my thoughts on every pick of the draft.